The year was 1995. I was 14 years old. Nelson Mandela had just been elected as the first democratically elected president of South Africa, after 30 years of imprisonment for his fight for freedom. As a South African by descent, I was proud and relieved. At the same time, in my home country of Malawi, we had gone through a series of protests to establish a multi-party system of government after 30 years of dictatorship. It was a time of hope. Perhaps equally importantly, the South African national rugby team had won the Rugby World Cup. After many years of being excluded from international competition because of the apartheid system. Nelson Mandela emerged in his green Springbok jersey, and we all waved our flags proudly as we cheered on our new multiracial team and celebrated the rebirth of our rainbow nation. It was a time of transformation. At the same time, it was the height of the AIDS pandemic. And my country, and many around it, were devastated by its impacts. Our extended family network, that had previously been able to absorb orphaned infants and children into its system, was no longer able to cope. And as a result, there was nowhere to go for many orphaned infants and children. As a result, infant homes were established to support vulnerable infants, many of them sick, many of them severely malnourished, many of them with HIV/AIDS, many of them needing infant formula and access to clean water for it. It was easy to feel helpless. It was at that time that my high school decided it was essential that as teenagers, we would engage in effective community collaboration as part of our holistic education. And so I joined a club, and I traveled every week to one of the infant homes to provide just a little bit of support for the infants and their caregivers. I was assigned a 4-month-old called Chisomo. She was severely malnourished. She couldn't hold up her head, and she had never smiled. I had no idea what to do. So I took one step forward, and I tried a few things. I tried a game where I dip her head up and down, with very little response. But after coming for several weeks, Chisomo came to know me. And one day, when I was dipping her head up and down, her face came up to mine, and she smiled for the very first time. That moment was transformative. I learned about the power of play, about the transformative power of turning up for someone else. And I resolved to continue to work in collaboration with my community to understand its needs. With my best friend, I established an after-school program for street children who weren't able to go to school. And I worked in a local maternity ward where we scrubbed dried blood off the beds on which women delivered their babies. I learned then about the power of economic inequality. And I also learned the Southern African proverb that says, "Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu." A person is only a person through other people. I resolved to become a pediatrician so that I could return to my community and support the infants that I had spent so much time with. So I went to college, and I took, in my first semester, organic chemistry. an intro to psychology. And I was hooked. As I began to better understand the different ways in which our physical and social environments impact our lives, I decided that that was the direction that I needed to take in my own work. I also that much of what I read about child and human development in my textbooks didn't necessarily reflect what I saw in my own community. And this is because less than 10% of developmental science research has studied communities that make up 90% of the world's population. I resolved to change this, beginning with my own undergraduate thesis, where I returned to these infant homes to study the attachment development of the infants who lived in these homes. All of the literature suggested that they were forming insecure, unhealthy attachments with the caregivers that turned up day in and day out, every day. But this literature came largely from Europe, from institutions behind the Iron Curtain, and this didn't seem to reflect what I had seen. And it wasn't. I found that these infants formed secure attachments with their caregivers, and that this was foundational for their ability to play, to learn, and to live healthy lives and return into their extended family network when they were able. Unfortunately, what I saw in these institutions reflects much of developmental science research even today. Or as developmental theorist Yuri Bronfenbrenner noted in the 1970s, it can be said that much of developmental science research is about the strange behavior of children in strange situations with strange adults for the briefest possible period of time. I resolved in my own work to better understand the full context in collaboration with community so that we can really better understand the physical and social environments that impact children's lives, and perhaps identify some ways in which we might transform them. I also learned through this work about the power of play as a proximal process that drives development. As children play, they actively engage in their own environments and direct their own development. Through this work, in graduate school and later at Sarah Lawrence, I became interested also in better understanding effective community collaboration. I became interested in community-based participatory action research and developed relationships with local schools and communities, where I was able to bring my college students into collaboration with their local communities as they studied issues of poverty in America and child and adolescent development in the United States and Africa, so that they could better understand human development, working with the humans that they were supposedly studying. I also had the opportunity to bring in high school students to this work in collaboration with Assistant Superintendent Bill Meyer. And we were able to bring our high school and college students together too to learn from each other. As part of this work, the Child Development Institute at Sarah Lawrence established community adventure play experiences. These are play opportunities for children in all communities, beginning in Yonkers and later in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Tanzania, and Antigua, where we aim to establish opportunities for children to collaborate with other children and families in their local communities using natural and found materials in their own environments, thus providing sustainable opportunity for their play. Through all of this work, I came to better understand the ways in which we can show up and should show up, and the ways in which our showing up might also be sometimes harmful. As the Indigenous Australian activist Lila Watson and her colleagues noted, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. In the face of major local and global challenges, it is easy for us to feel overwhelmed and helpless, just as I did as a 14-year-old in the midst of the AIDS pandemic in Malawi. But I have learned that if we take the first step, and then the next, and then the next, we can find our community, and we can work to transform it together. Or, as the great wizard Gandalf from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring says, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And, as the Tanzanian proverb says, little by little, a little becomes a lot. May we take that first step, and then the next, and then the next, together in collaborative community, that we might then transform our communities, and through the process, ourselves. Thank you.